The first time my dad told me I should let him know whenever Mom messed up, I was only 6. He said it so calmly, like he was teaching me how to ride a bike. But the way his eyes locked onto mine, cold and sharp, made my stomach twist. I remember it like a movie. It was a rainy evening in Cleveland, Ohio. The kitchen smelled like burnt cheese, and my mom was frantically scraping a blackened grilled cheese sandwich off the pan. I had started crying because I wanted it to taste right. I was a kid, just 6, and hunger made me dramatic. But the moment I cried, everything shifted. My dad's heavy footsteps thundered down the staircase, and Mom's eyes filled with terror. Not annoyance, not frustration, terror. She clapped her hand over my mouth, whispering, "Please, please stop, Daniel." But it was too late. The door frame filled with my father's shadow. "Son, go to your room," he said, voice as flat and cold as winter ice. I obeyed instantly. My small feet padded up the stairs, and I shut the door behind me, heart racing. But even through the wood, I heard the explosion. "You can't even cook for my boy," he shouted, his voice cracking the walls. Then came a sound that still haunts me, the thud of a body hitting the floor. I pushed my door open just a crack. What I saw is burned into me forever. My mom, clutching her face, the skin around her left eye already swelling, already turning colors. I sprinted to her, kneeling, hugging her like I could hold her together. But then my father's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Don't waste your tears on her, Daniel. She got what she deserved." I froze. I wanted to scream at him, but my throat locked. And then he added something worse. "You want to be next, boy." That was the night my training began. Over the next few months, Dad taught me to watch. Watch every little mistake Mom made. If she left the laundry unfolded. If she forgot to take out the trash. If dinner wasn't hot the second he walked in the door. He called it helping her be better. But when I didn't report something, he showed me how discipline worked. Sometimes it was the belt. Sometimes his fist. Sometimes he just grabbed me by the hair and shoved me against the wall until I couldn't breathe. The twisted part? Mom encouraged me to do what he said. "No, Daniel," she'd whisper with a cracked lip, "you do what your father tells you. It's for the best." So, I became his little spy. His personal surveillance camera. And I told myself this was just family. This was normal. But then one afternoon, when I was 8, everything I thought I knew cracked. I was at my friend Lucas's house. His parents were the kind of couple that made me jealous, still together, laughing, teasing each other. His mom made us burgers, and when I bit into mine, the bun was burnt. Out of habit, I blurted, "This is burnt." I braced myself. My chest tightened, waiting for Lucas's dad to explode, for him to grab his wife by the hair and slam her against the counter. But instead, Lucas's dad just laughed. "Yep, she's always doing that. Guess you'll have to eat it crispy, champ." Lucas's mom blushed, hiding her face with her hands while everyone laughed. It was normal. Loving, even. And when I left, they both kissed me on the cheek. Both parents. Both alive. Both safe. The whole walk home, my mind spun. I kept replaying the scene, trying to understand why no one got hurt. Why burnt food wasn't a crime in their house. But when I stepped inside my own front door, reality hit like a hammer. Mom was on the marble floor. Blood streaked her forehead. She was shaking, crying, barely able to lift her head. Upstairs, Dad's snores rattled the ceiling. I dropped to my knees beside her, grabbing a towel from the counter and pressing it against the wound. "I'm sorry, Mom," I whispered, tears streaming. "I should have been here. I love you." She didn't say a word. She just gripped my arm so tight her nails left little crescent marks in my skin, and nodded. That was the night I decided I was done. The next day, I skipped going home after school. My legs carried me straight to the police station in downtown Cleveland. I was terrified, shaking, barely able to speak, but when the woman behind the desk asked what was wrong, the words poured out. The hitting. The yelling. The way he makes me spy on my mom. The way he hurts us. Her eyes widened, and she immediately called a social worker. An hour later, a woman named Ms. Reed sat with me, promising help. "Daniel, we'll come to your house tonight. We'll get you and your mom somewhere safe. But if," her voice softened, "your parents will know you were the one who told." My stomach dropped. But then she hugged me and whispered, "You're so brave." For the first time in years, I smiled. That night, at exactly 9 p.m., there was a knock on our door. Mom opened it, expecting her sister or a neighbor. Instead, Ms. Reed stepped inside, notebook in hand. She looked right at my mom's swollen face, her bruised arms, and said, "We need to talk." My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. This was it. Our chance. Our escape. But I didn't know yet that my father was already 3 steps ahead. The knock on the door should have been my salvation. Instead, it was the beginning of something worse. Ms. Reed, the social worker, stood in the living room with her notebook. She gently asked Mom questions about her bruises, her swollen eye, the cut still healing on her forehead. But my mom froze. Her face drained of color like the blood had left her body. She whispered something I couldn't hear and then she called my dad. I swear, my heart stopped. Within minutes, Mom was smiling awkwardly, saying she'd slipped in the kitchen. Ms. Reed's frown deepened, but she scribbled something in her notes. "These injuries don't look like an accident." Mom's eyes darted toward the phone, like she was terrified of missing his call back. And then she said the words that doomed us. "My husband will explain everything. You'll see." When Dad came home, it was like watching a magician pull off the greatest trick of his life. He greeted Ms. Reed with his fake charming smile, offering her coffee, apologizing for the misunderstanding. He told her Mom had been in a minor car accident last week, that the bruises were from that. "And my son," he added with this sigh that made my stomach twist, "well, Daniel has quite the imagination. He struggles sometimes. Wants attention." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw myself at Ms. Reed and beg her not to believe him. But my feet felt glued to the carpet. My tongue weighed 1,000 pounds. By the time she left, she apologized for the inconvenience. My hope died in that moment. I tried to run upstairs, but his voice stopped me cold. "Daniel." The way he said my name, sharp and deliberate, froze me in place. His hand clamped around my arm before I could reach the stairs. "If you think what I did to your mother was bad," he hissed, leaning so close I could smell the alcohol on his breath, "you should have seen how my father handled snitches." That was the last thing I remember before everything went black. When I woke up, I was on my bedroom floor. My entire body screamed with pain. Mom sat on the edge of my bed, wiping blood from my lip with a damp towel. Her eyes were hollow, empty, like there was nothing left inside. "I'm sorry," she whispered, so soft I barely heard it. "But you need to understand, we can never tell anyone again." The word sliced through me deeper than any belt or fist ever could. She wasn't just giving up. She was asking me to give up too. The next morning, I dragged myself to school. Every step felt like a knife stabbing into my ribs. I could barely sit at my desk without wincing. My teacher, Mrs. Parker, noticed. She leaned down, concern etched on her face. "Daniel, are you okay?" The lie slipped out of me without thought. "Yeah. Just fell off my bike." I'd been telling lies like that for years. They flowed as easily as breathing now. After that, Dad decided his system needed an upgrade. "Your mother clearly needs more help than I thought," he announced one night at dinner, his tone casual, almost friendly. But the way his eyes pinned me to the chair made bile rise in my throat. "From now on, you'll report everything she does wrong. Every mistake. If you miss something, both of you will pay for it." It wasn't just chores anymore. It was everything. If Mom took too long at the grocery store, I had to tell him. If she spent an extra minute on the phone with her sister, I had to report it. If she put dinner on the table at 6:01 instead of 6 o'clock, it counted. And the worst part? Mom started reminding me. She'd whisper, "Don't forget to tell him, Daniel," her hand shaking as she chopped vegetables. She was so afraid of what would happen if I didn't, she made herself part of my spying too. I broke down at school one day. Locked myself in the bathroom and cried until I couldn't breathe. That's when Hugo found me. He was the new kid, transferred from another school just a month earlier. He didn't ask questions, just sat with me in silence until my sobs quieted. After that, we started eating lunch together. He talked about video games, movies, dumb stuff that made me laugh. It felt like a crack of light in a world that had been dark for too long. But my body kept betraying me. One afternoon, my sleeve slipped up, and Hugo saw the bruises. He didn't say anything at first. Just quietly handed me an extra sandwich his mom had packed. The next day, he gave me a weird-looking rock he said he'd found. The day after that, a toy car he didn't want anymore. Little things, but they felt like lifelines. Eventually, I told him a little bit. Not everything, just enough. "My dad gets mad sometimes," I mumbled. Hugo didn't freak out. He just nodded. My cousin's stepdad was like that. She got help. Things got better. For the first time in my life, I wondered if maybe there was a way out. But Dad had eyes everywhere. He showed up at school sometimes, unannounced, just to see who I was talking to. He grilled me every night about every detail of my day. And Mom? She watched me like a hawk, too. We were both trapped in the same twisted game, trying to protect each other, but powerless to stop him. One afternoon, Hugo asked me to come over to his house. My chest clenched. I hadn't been to anyone's house since Lucas's, years ago. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to see what normal looked like again. But instead, I lied. Can't. Gotta help my mom. He looked disappointed, but didn't push. His eyes lingered on me, though, like he was trying to decode a language I wasn't ready to teach him. When I got home that day, Dad was waiting at the door. "You're 7 minutes late." He checked his watch. I felt my stomach plummet. "My teacher kept us after class," I said quickly. For once, it was actually true. He stared at me so long I thought my legs would collapse under me. Then he nodded. "Go tell your mother dinner better be ready in 20 minutes. His voice was calm. That was worse than the yelling. Calm meant control. Calm meant danger. In the kitchen, Mom's hand shook so badly the knife nearly slipped as she chopped onions. I whispered the message. She just nodded without looking up. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Thinking about Hugo. About his invitation. About how badly I wanted to say yes. But the scars on my arms reminded me why I couldn't. Because my dad had made one thing crystal clear. Any attempt to reach for help would end in blood. When I was little, before I understood what kind of man my dad really was, I used to think his rules made sense. He told me discipline made men strong. That tears were weakness. That Mom messed up because she didn't listen. I believed him, because what else was I supposed to believe at 6 years old? But as I grew older, memories started colliding with reality. I'll never forget one night when I was 7. I had a fever, shaking under my blankets, begging Mom for water. She rushed to the kitchen to grab a glass, her steps frantic. Dad appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, his silhouette a block of darkness. "Why isn't the kid asleep yet?" Mom explained I was sick, but she didn't say it fast enough. His hand lashed out so quick I thought I imagined it. She stumbled into the wall, the glass shattering in her hand. "Maybe if you kept this house cleaner, he wouldn't get sick," Dad sneered. I remember lying there, burning with fever, while my mom picked shards of glass out of her palm, whispering apologies to me instead of to herself. And Dad? He just stood there, like a warden making sure we both understood the rules. That memory haunted me when I was 12, when I realized my life had become a copy of hers. I wasn't just his son anymore. I was his deputy. His eyes. His proof that he was right. And I hated myself for it. Hugo was the only person who made me feel like maybe I wasn't completely swallowed up by my father's world. At lunch, he'd slide his chocolate milk over to me with a grin. "You look like you need this more than me." He'd talk about dumb stuff, movies, video games, how the Browns were the worst team in the NFL but he loved them anyway. For 30 minutes a day, I was just a kid, not a spy, not a punching bag. Just Daniel. One afternoon during gym, I was changing my shirt when Hugo's eyes locked on the bruises across my ribs. "Dude, what the hell happened?" he whispered. My instinct was automatic. I fell down the stairs. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I said it anyway. He shook his head. "That's not from falling. My cousin used to say the same thing. Her stepdad hit her. It looked just like that." I wanted to yell at him to shut up. To stop looking at me like he knew me. Panic crawled up my chest, choking me. "Drop it, okay?" I snapped, slamming my locker shut. The clang echoed like a gunshot. But Hugo didn't back off. After school, he walked halfway home with me, talking the whole way. About his cousin. About how she'd finally told someone and things had gotten better. "You don't understand," I finally burst out. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. I tried. I told. It made everything worse. And for the first time, I told someone about Ms. Reed. About the visit. About the punishment after. Hugo's eyes widened, but he didn't run. He didn't call me a liar. He just clenched his jaw. "Then we need better evidence," he said. "My mom works at the hospital. She knows what abuse looks like." "If she saw?" "No." I grabbed his arm, my fingers digging into his sleeve. "Promise me you won't tell anyone." "You can't. He'll kill us." Hugo hesitated, then nodded. "Okay. I won't. But you can't keep living like this." His words lingered long after he walked away. The next weekend, Dad dragged me into the garage. The air smelled like dust and motor oil. He handed me a beer. I was 12. "Drink," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. I gagged after the first sip, the bitterness burning my throat. He laughed. "Your grandfather gave me my first beer when I was your age. Said it'd make me a man. You want to be a man, don't you, Daniel?" I nodded, forcing another swallow while bile rose in my chest. His hand clamped on my shoulder, squeezing until pain shot through my arm. "Men take care of their families. They keep women in line. That's what I'm teaching you." I stared at the concrete floor, watching a spider disappear into a crack, wishing I could crawl in with it. That night, lying awake in bed, I made a decision. If the adults wouldn't help me, I had to help myself. It started with a notebook. I stole it from the supply closet at school and hid it under a loose floorboard in my closet. Every night, after Dad went to sleep, I wrote everything down. The date. The time. What he did. The night he threw a plate at Mom because the pot roast was too salty. The time he locked me in the basement for hours because I hadn't reported she'd spent too long on the phone. The night he forced me to stand in the kitchen and list all of Mom's mistakes while she stood crying in the corner. Each entry felt like a tiny act of rebellion. Proof that I wasn't crazy. That this was real. That someday, someone would know the truth. For weeks, I filled those pages with ink and rage, scratching the pen so hard the paper nearly tore. It didn't make me safe. But it made me feel less invisible. But secrets don't stay hidden in our house. One afternoon, I left the notebook out by accident when I ran to the bathroom. When I came back, Dad was sitting on my bed, turning the pages with that smug smile plastered on his face. Interesting stories, he said, flipping through like it was a bedtime book. Quite the imagination you've got, son. I froze in the doorway. My chest locked. Then, slowly, deliberately, he tore the notebook in half. Page by page, until the pieces floated to the carpet like confetti. Did you really think this would help? He asked, his voice calm, almost amused. Who would believe you over me? I'm a respected man in this community. And you? You're just a kid with a history of making things up. He stood, his shadow stretching across the room, and stepped closer until my back hit the wall. His voice dropped to a whisper. If I ever find anything like this again, your mother will pay the price. Do you understand? Tears burned down my cheeks. I nodded. Good boy, he said, patting my cheek like I was a dog. Then he left, leaving me shaking in the ruins of my rebellion. I dropped to my knees, gathering the shredded pieces in my hands, sobbing silently. All that truth, all that evidence, gone. But as I stared at the scraps, something hardened inside me. If paper wasn't safe, I needed something else. Something he couldn't rip apart. Something no smile could explain away. And that's when I decided to start documenting differently. After Dad shredded my notebook, I thought the fight was over. That I'd lost. But grief has a way of hardening into something else. Something sharper. I couldn't stop thinking about Hugo's cousin, about how she got out once people believed her. If I couldn't use words on a page, maybe I needed proof no one could tear apart. That chance came on a Tuesday at school. Can I borrow your phone? I whispered to Hugo during lunch. He blinked at me, surprised. Why? I need it. Please. He studied me for a long moment. Then, without a word, he slid something under the table, not his current phone, but an older one. My parents don't check this one anymore, he muttered. Charger's in my locker. Just don't get caught. My throat tightened. I wanted to hug him, but I couldn't. Not there. Not where anyone could see. That night, I hid the phone inside the vent in my bedroom wall, behind the metal grate I'd loosened weeks before. When the house went quiet, I pulled it out and took my first picture, Mom asleep on the couch, a bruise the size of a fist darkening her wrist. Then I recorded Dad's muffled voice through the wall, the venom dripping from every word as he listed her failures for the day. Click. Record. Save. Each file was a weapon. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a shadow inside my own house. I positioned the phone in cereal boxes, behind stacks of books, taped beneath the dining room table. I discovered it had a motion sensor. If Dad walked by, it would capture him. I got video of him slamming his fist into the wall inches from Mom's head. Audio of him threatening to teach me what happens to weak sons. Clips of him lecturing me about how a real man keeps his family under control. Every night, I downloaded everything into a hidden, password-protected folder. My hands shook every time, but I couldn't stop. It felt like the only power I had. For the first time, I thought, maybe someone will believe me. But Dad was always watching. At parent-teacher conferences, I caught him glancing at me across the classroom while he shook Mrs. Parker's hand. His smile was too wide, too forced. And then disaster hit. The next day, Hugo didn't come to school. When he showed up later in the week, his face was pale, his eyes avoiding mine. I cornered him at lunch. What happened? My parents think I stole money from your house, he whispered, shame burning his cheeks. Your dad told them. I froze. That's a lie. I know. But they believed him. They grounded me. Took my phone. Everything. My heart sank. Dad had cut my only lifeline. At home, things got worse. Dad started asking more questions about Hugo. Who he was. What we talked about. One night, over dinner, he looked at me with that chilling smile. Invite your friend over sometime. I'd like to meet him. Panic flooded me. He's busy with sports, I lied quickly. Doesn't have much free time. Dad just nodded. But I knew he didn't buy it. His memory was a steel trap, every word I said would come back to haunt me. The following weekend, he punished me for not reporting that Mom had stayed on the phone with her sister too long. Garage duty, he said flatly, tossing me a rag. Hours later, my arms ached from moving boxes. Dust coated my throat. Then he appeared with 2 beers. I was 12. He handed me one. Drink. The bitter liquid burned my tongue, made me gag. He laughed. Your grandfather made me a man at your age. I'm just passing it on. He leaned closer, his breath sour. Men don't snitch, Daniel. Men protect their families. Do you want to be a man? I nodded, but inside I was screaming. By Monday, Hugo noticed something was wrong. During gym, when I lifted my shirt, he saw the bruises across my back, fresh, dark, ugly. What happened? He hissed. Fell down the stairs, I muttered, the lie automatic. He shook his head. Stop. That's what my cousin used to say. Daniel, you can't keep this secret forever. I snapped. You don't get it. I tried. They already know. They don't care. For a moment, his face was unreadable. Then he said quietly, then we'll make them care. My mom's a nurse. She'll know. If she sees the bruises. I grabbed his arm so hard my knuckles whitened. No. Promise me. If you tell anyone, he'll kill us. Hugo swallowed, then nodded. Okay. I promise. But the look in his eyes told me he hadn't given up. And then came the night that shattered everything. Dad walked in from work whistling. That was always a bad sign, the fake happiness meant he was hiding something. Over dinner, he casually dropped the bomb. Ran into your friend Hugo's dad today. Nice guy. We're having them over this weekend. My fork clattered against the plate. What? Small town, son. People know people. I thought it'd be nice for you to have a friend over. Like normal families do. His emphasis on normal made my stomach twist. I barely tasted my food that night. Every bite stuck in my throat like gravel. The dinner was worse than I could have imagined. Dad turned into the perfect host, charming, funny, generous. He made Hugo's parents laugh, kept their glasses full, told stories about his hard-working family life. Mom sat stiff, smiling too hard, her sleeves hiding fresh bruises. I sat silent, barely moving. At one point, Hugo tried steering the conversation toward child abuse cases his mom had seen at the hospital. Dad smoothly redirected it, then shot me a look so cold my blood ran to ice. Afterward, in my room, Hugo whispered, "Are you sure? He seems normal." I wanted to scream. Instead, I snapped, "That's what he does. That's how he fools everyone." We argued in hushed voices until his parents called him to leave. And as soon as the door closed behind them, Dad turned to me with that smile. "Nice family," he said. Though Hugo's got quite an imagination. His father says he's been telling stories about us at home. My stomach dropped. Somehow, Dad had already poisoned the well. "Go to your room," he said smoothly. "Your mother and I need to talk." I went upstairs, but I didn't sleep. I sat frozen at the top of the stairs, listening. I heard my dad's voice, low and sharp. "No more Hugo. If I catch him near my son again, there'll be consequences." Mom whispered something too soft to hear. Then the sound of ice clinking in his glass, the creak of his favorite chair as he settled in. And I realized with a sinking weight in my chest, he was tightening the cage. I was losing the one person who could save me. Dad came home late, his shoes clicking against the hardwood like a countdown. No yelling. No threats. Just a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "Daniel, he said calmly, "Bring me your phone." My chest locked. He knew. Somehow, he knew. I handed over my school phone, the one teachers gave us for assignments. He scrolled for a few seconds, then set it down. "Good," he murmured. "No secrets." But I saw his gaze drift toward the vent in my room. The hiding spot. The old phone. My lifeline. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling, every muscle rigid, waiting for the sound of footsteps. And then, creak. Slow. Heavy. Coming closer. My door opened. The hall light stretched across my carpet. Dad's shadow filled the frame. "You think you're smarter than me, boy." His voice was low, dangerous. "You think you can humiliate me." In his hand, he held the phone. The phone. My evidence. He tossed it onto the floor between us. The screen cracked, files erased. Weeks of proof, gone in a single swipe. "You'll never beat me," he whispered, his breath hot with alcohol. "Because nobody will ever believe you." For a second, I broke. My body shook so violently I thought I'd collapse. But then I remembered Hugo. I remembered his mom's words, "Evidence doesn't just disappear if you share it." Because I hadn't just saved everything on that phone. I'd already backed it up. To Hugo. To the cloud. To 3 different emails I'd created in secret. So I looked him in the eye for the first time in my life and said, "You're wrong. They will." Something in my voice must have shifted, because his smirk faltered. His hand twitched like he wanted to hit me, but before he could, headlights swept across the window. Tires crunched on gravel. A knock pounded at the front door. "Cleveland PD, open up." Dad froze. For once, he wasn't in control. The next minutes blurred, officers flooding in, questions firing, my mom sobbing as they pulled Dad's arms behind his back. He screamed at me, voice cracking with rage. "You did this. You ruined us." But as they dragged him out, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not victory. Not safety. Just air. Like I could finally breathe. Mom collapsed against me, whispering apologies I wasn't ready to accept. The house was still the same, walls still stained with his shadow. But I knew the cage was broken. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling one last time. The silence was heavy, but it wasn't suffocating anymore. And for the first time, I realized the truth. I hadn't destroyed my family. I'd saved it.